Hello, I am Mudita, and welcome back to Satisfactory. If you're new here, welcome. I was looking for a challenge for a new playthrough, and I decided to load balance just about everything. There are 0 factories with manifolds in this world. This is episode 36 of my first load balance playthrough, and today I'm going to tackle the final Phase 4 space elevator part, nuclear pasta. I already have the pressure conversion cubes that I'll need for this, and I'll be using a drone to bring those in. This factory is using a couple of blueprints, and if you're interested in those, there's another playlist that goes over most of them, and there's a link to the Google Drive in the description. I'm going to be using this spot and all of these nodes. Thankfully, with all the pressure conversion cubes taken care of, instead of my flowchart looking like this, it looks like this. I do love the flowchart, and it is great for being able to visualize where everything is going. But to explain my decisions here, let me show you a snippet from my spreadsheet. So to make the 10 pasta, it's going to need the copper powder and the pressure conversion cubes. I've already got those taken care of, so we just need to focus on copper powder. Since each machine needs 100 per minute, I'm going to need 2,000 copper powder per minute. So that brings us to the copper powder. There are no alternates, so I have no choice but to make 12,000 copper ingots per minute. Thankfully, it only needs 40 constructors. So this brings us to the only real choice I had, how I wanted to make 12,000 copper ingots. So let me lay out the 3 choices. We've got the default recipe, which does have one small advantage. However, the big downside is you need 12,000 copper ore, which is a lot. You're going to need 400 smelters, but it would use the least amount of power. Option 2, which is a fantastic choice, is the pure copper ingot. You only need 4,800 copper ore, so this one is by far the most efficient as far as the ore is concerned. However, you do need 3,200 water, so at a minimum, you're going to need about 11 water extractors and a bunch of power shards. The downside to this, and the reason I didn't go with it, is because each machine only intakes 15 copper ore, you need 320 refineries, and each one of those needs significantly more power. So this choice is by far the best on copper ore, the worst on power. But for me, it's the amount of space. 320 refineries is a lot. So we've got our last and final option, which is the one that I went with. Copper alloy ingots. So you do need about 25% more copper ore than you would with the pure copper ingot, and instead of water, you need 3,000 iron ore, but I still had plenty of iron ore in my world, so for me, that really wasn't a downside. The big upside for this one is each machine intakes and outputs so much material, I only need 120 foundries, and the power consumption is only a little bit more than placing 400 smelters. And then if you line up the numbers for all 3 of these, I need 20 particle accelerators, 40 copper powder, and 120 foundries. Meaning I'll be able to line these up pretty nicely with 1 particle accelerator being fed by 2 constructors, which are being fed by 3 foundries each. Here we are, back in the Dune Desert. That is where the pressure conversion cubes are coming from. I've got a drone port on one of those sides. I've got towers set up on all of the copper nodes that I'm going to be using, so they're kind of spread out, but it's really not too bad. So most of these are pure and normal. I think these back 2 over there are both impure, so I'll join those together up for a nice even 600. And then I still need to place them on the iron nodes, but because I need half as much and there's plenty of iron left out here in the desert, I'm just going to figure that out later. I wanted to figure out where all the copper was and make sure that I wasn't going to have to outsource that from anywhere else. And of course I've got my mobile storage with my drone port set up already because we are going to use a good amount of concrete. So the next step is going to be to lay out the platform that this is all going to go on. My original plan was to have it, because it's going to be a fairly large piece, but I thought this would be big enough in between these 2 roundabouts, and then I could put half of them on this side, half of them on this side, and just have the train kind of running through it, maybe make a little archway over this of like glass or something. But unfortunately, this is going to take up just too much space, so we're going to put it all on this one side. So let me get this laid out, and I'll show you how the machines are going to go in. The good old drone dance as they wait to deliver me all my goods. And I've built the platform. So we went with something a little bit different. Gonna use a little bit of underfloor logistics. And then it's gonna be split between half of it on here and then half of it up here. Like I said, it was just a little bit too long to be able to squeeze in between that stretch. So it wasn't really gonna work the way I planned. And the reason for it is this is gonna be the layout. Let me show you. I'm gonna start with the particle accelerator, and I'm gonna give it plenty of space to do all of the merging. And the way the spacing is gonna work is each one of these sections is gonna take up 8 foundations. So I want to center this in between the 4th ones. Now that it's centered, we're just gonna place that one there. So the next step is 2 constructors. But I don't know exactly where I'm going to put those. So for now, I'm just going to place 2 of them right there. And now I'm going to take my 3 foundry blueprint. Since this blueprint is exactly 4 foundations by 4 foundations, it makes it really easy. And this is kind of what dictates how big this whole thing is. So in total, this is just going to go all the way down. But just to show you one section. So from here, now I'm going to change where the constructors are going because I want these to feed in straight. So these are going to go somewhere around here. With this recipe, the machines are outputting 100 ingots per minute, which means Mark 1 isn't going to be enough, so all of these are going to need to get changed to Mark 2. So we'll have 300 coming out of each of these mergers, so this one needs to be a Mark 4. And because placing the merger in line with where it's going to plug in is going to be weird no matter which spot we put it in, I'm going to put it right in the middle of the 2 constructors instead. Because I figured, why not give myself plenty of space with this? With the copper powder recipe, each constructor is outputting 50 per minute, so I only need Mark 1 belts for here. And then we'll just snake in a Mark II belt to here. And so that's one setup. I just need to copy this 20 more times. And this right here is the reason I wanted to finish this whole series off with this part. I think this is a terrific example of why load balancing is great, especially in certain circumstances. I'll be able to load balance all 10 pressure conversion cubes across all 20 fairly easily. And as far as dealing with 12,000 copper ingots, this really won't be too bad, I promise. So let me copy this a whole bunch more times and we'll go through the tour. This is actually going to be one of the shorter videos I've done in a while. And just like that, it's all done. So let's go through it. So it does start with the 120 foundries. So I made the top 4 a little bit more compact because I wanted it to be set inwards a little bit so that it wasn't covering up the particle accelerators. Really just because I like the way that it would look that way. So we've got all of our foundries, and the belt work for these really simple, and that's the other reason why I went with this recipe is it just made everything. Really even numbers, really convenient. It's a lot, but I don't have to deal with any crazy fractions or decimal points. Everything is just nice round numbers. So the way that it breaks down is we need 50 copper per machine and 25 iron ore. So since these are grouped up in 3s, that means I need 150 copper on this line. That's pretty easy. Then we just have this one split. So this is 300 on this one, and that feeds the 6 machines for 1 particle accelerator. And so that's 300, and then I just have a mirrored setup for the next machine. So for every 12 machines, it's being fed by 1 600 belt of copper ore. And then every 24 machines, double that, is being fed by 1 600 line of iron ore. So this section needed 1 iron and 2 copper belts. This middle section is half as big, so it's 1 copper and it's half in an iron belt. and then the other 2 and 1. So I just have them all coming up through lifts in the back here, and we'll just cut a hole here and go downstairs. I didn't need a ton of space, so it's only, I think, 2 foundations tall. So only 8 meters for the logistics floor, but I really didn't need that much space. Even with all of these belts, it was fairly straightforward. So the only one that I really had to do much with is that one iron line needed to split down here. So I have half of it being sent to this bottom floor, and then the other half is being sent upstairs. Right here in the middle of the bottom floor, we just have a parade of all of the ore. All of the belts from the different miners are coming in, being plugged in underneath, and then instead of just going straight to where they need to go, they're all being brought to that middle spot back there into lifts, and then that way they can all be paraded across this section right here, and I can easily tell if any of these have an issue, because either it'll be stopped up or there won't be nearly as much as the rest of them. All of these belts should be 600, so they should look fairly uniform. The gaps may not all line up, obviously, but it should look pretty consistent. It's going to have 5 copper, then 5 iron, and then 5 copper. Because I didn't need to squeeze every last bit out of each of these nodes, I was able to make it all really convenient. So instead of using the full 780 or even 750 of the pure node, I'm just using 600 out of all of the nodes. So with normal, that's being fully overclocked, and with the pure node, it's only overclocked to 125%. But this just made everything easy, since I was able to find enough nodes out here, and this is the very end of the game, and I really don't need to squeeze every last bit out of it. I didn't need to do any of the crazy load balancing. I mentioned before I'm just using 2 impure nodes, so those are just getting combined. But it was a lot easier than overclocking something to 750 and then having to siphon off 150 and group it up with other ones. Everything's just set to 600, just going straight into the factory, being paraded across the middle, going to its part, and it's all pretty simple. And that's the bulk of the production that's happening, but half of the last recipe is coming from this line right here. That drone is going to go right over to that factory, grab some pressure conversion cubes, bring them back, and then this is how they're going to feed into the machines. They'll go here, half of them will go upstairs to feed that floor, the other half will stay here. One half of that, so 1/4 of them, will then go into a 5-way split, go into those 5 particle accelerators, and then same thing on that side, and then just the mirrored setup upstairs. Even though the cycle time for these machines is I think 2 minutes, with these belts all being Mark 1 and such a long travel time all the way to go here and then into the drone port, we'll always have a nice parade of those bright blue orbs. The last time I get to turn on a factory. For this save, so it won't last too long. I'm going to do this in 2 stages, so instead of turning this on because waiting for the drone to come back, and then since the pressure conversion cubes are coming on Mark 1 belts, it's going to take a few minutes to load balance across all of the machines. Not that many, but definitely long enough that the copper is going to finish much faster. And that's really the much more exciting part, is getting to see how quick this makes 12,000 copper ingots and turn them into 2,000 copper powder. I left myself a handy dandy sign underneath the drone port. I'm going to connect this, and it's going to get the drone connected to the main power, so that can get started right now. And I'm going to let it run for about 10 minutes, and then I'll flip the switch and we'll watch the rest of it come to life. There's been a steady parade of the 10 pressure conversion cubes for a little bit now, so let's go ahead and turn this on. there it is. Well, there they are. Wasn't it beautiful? That's my favorite part. It's just got such a cool model. And there's the beauty of the load balancing. Everything is staying on pretty much right away, since everything was a pretty even split. We didn't have to cycle anything back like we would with the 5 or the 7-way splits, so everything boots up super quick, really reliable. You'll love to see it. So that is a nice steady 10 nuclear pasta per minute. Now that we've got these bad boys headed to the drone port right here, I'm just going to let these pile up just a little bit so that when the first drone takes them over to the space elevator, it'll leave a little bit of a buffer so it doesn't run out or anything, and then it'll just continuously run. And then it really won't take too long to get the last 1,000 parts we need into the space elevator. And I can finally become employee of the planet. Oh, we are so close. Alright, let's turn on this drone port. So it turns out I forgot to name it. So, a neat trick, if you didn't know, if you can find your drone port on the map and you hover over it, you can see what's inside. So I've got plenty of pasta in that one. So that's our drone port, 67. And there it is. The final countdown begins. So since we're making 10 a minute and I only need 1,000, this really isn't going to take all that long. It'll give me a chance to clean up a few things around the world and get ready for the final tour. So that's going to be the final video. We're going to do a final tour along with turning in the space elevator. And that's going to wrap up this crazy playthrough. So look forward to that, and thanks for watching.